Hey folks, welcome back. This is Chris in Central Pennsylvania. The propaganda war has begun. It's a full-out blitz in response to Representative Ronny Jackson's bill to consider or reconsider the U.S.-South Africa bilateral diplomatic relationship and the call for a review of potential sanctions against senior African National Congress party leaders and members of the Government of National Unity who are responsible for undermining U.S. national security interests and basically collapsing South Africa. Now, this bill was introduced on the 3rd of April, and it's a revisit of a bill introduced on a bipartisan basis in 2024. In February 2024, Democrats and Republicans put forward a bill to do exactly the same thing that Ronny Jackson and John James, two Republicans, put forward on April 3rd of 2025. The bill died last year in Congress because it wouldn't get through the president and the Democrats weren't going to get it through the Senate. So now we turn forward to 2025. The bill went in to Congress on the 3rd of April. I was skeptical that it would get out of committee, but it has gotten out of committee here in July, just 3 months later. A bit surprising. And now the full propaganda blitz comes on. I saw an interview on Newsroom Africa. The commentator in the studio twisted the story about these sanctions when he was interviewing Ernst van Zyl from AfriForum, trying to blame AfriForum for affecting U.S. foreign policy, which is comical to say the very least. It shows how uninformed Newsroom Africa is if they actually believe that that's the case. It just shows how uninformed this news network is that they actually believe AfriForum affected foreign policy. In that interview, the Newsroom Africa anchor twisted the bill that's in the House around. The bill specifically would target senior leaders, not South Africans, not state-owned enterprises, not the government of South Africa whole, and not the people of South Africa. The idea is to punish those responsible for destroying South Africa and undermining U.S. national interest over the past 2.5 decades. That's what the bill is about. But the anchor twisted this from that story being about leaders and then came back in conversation later on and says, if it's later sanctions that we see on South Africa, then will you accept responsibility for it? Well, that's ludicrous. It's a law. You don't just get to make it up as you go. Unless the law gets amended in the House or the Senate to punish South Africa, that's just a ludicrous piece of supposition. Now let's go beyond that. We've got more propaganda. This coming from the son of the Reverend Jesse Jackson Jr. Yes, Jesse Jackson. Yes, his son Jonathan Jackson, who is a member of Congress from Illinois' 1st District, a Democrat, of course. Of course, Jesse Jackson, famous for the Rainbow Coalition and for, using money from the Rainbow Coalition for illicit purposes. We'll just leave it at that. You can do your research on that. But the professed anti-apartheid activist Jesse Jackson, his son Jonathan Jackson, is upset about this bill. He's calling it a MAGA bill. Well, first off, that's disingenuous. As I said, this bill was introduced last year and it failed, and now it's back this year. So he said it is ideologically driven and it risks dismantling decades of diplomatic relations with South Africa. Well, here's a little news flash for Representative Jonathan Jackson from Illinois. The relationship is broken, and it's broken not because of the actions of the U.S. We gave these people $500 million a year in foreign aid for decades. We've given them $8.1 billion total aid money for HIV and AIDS. We have sponsored their loans from the World Bank, the IMF, the African Development Bank, and we've supported the South African government in international fora and backed them and looked the other way while they dismantled a democratic society under a kleptocracy. Representative Jackson, you are completely clueless. This isn't dismantling a diplomatic relationship. That already occurred. This is an effort to make them take note of what they've done to this relationship and how they've harmed the United States. Clearly, you're not very well informed what's going on in South Africa, Representative Jackson. He said, in fact, it threatens to undermine diplomatic relation at a time when strengthening its relationship is crucial. This bill proposes a full review of relationship as long as the focus is on the South African government and the ANC leaders for potential sanctions. It's on ANC leaders and leaders in the government, absolutely, which is where the focus should be, absolutely. Then later on, he goes on to claim that this is not diplomacy, this is coercion, and it's based on a deeply flawed premise that ignores the complexities of international relationships and strides we have made together. Well, Representative Jackson, you don't seem to understand the complexity of international relations or diplomacy. The South African government and its representatives are the ones who have undermined this relationship. In this bill, if you take the time to read it, there are over 40 egregious offenses against the United States, our friends, partners, and allies that have harmed our interest. And that's just scratching the surface. I could take you back to the refusal to sign Article 98 waiver protecting our soldiers. And we can go from there. The Lady R incident, training Chinese fighter pilots in South Africa. This is ridiculous. Representative Jackson, you're just spewing propaganda. And I'm not sure what your motivation is, because your dad's legacy, or maybe it's a black like me thing, or maybe you have some sort of affinity with the ANC, which is shameful on your part, because this is a party that loves state-sponsored terrorists and terror groups. They're in bed with Hamas. They love Hezbollah. They love Tehran. They're deep friends with Putin, a autocrat in Russia, and with Beijing, busy licking the boots. You know, Representative Jackson, you want to talk about repairing relationship. At a time when South Africa should have trade representatives in America to negotiate a bilateral trade deal like most countries are doing, South Africa, as the days dwindle down to a 30% tariff that will be imposed on their market exports to the United States on August 1st, instead of having anyone here, there's no ambassador. There's been no ambassador since the racist comments of Ibrahim Rasool was sent packing. No special representative. Nkabisi Jonas was fraudulently put forward as a special envoy and never sent here because he was rejected, apparently. No trade representative, no trade delegation. You're talking about a relationship that this bill is going to damage? What planet are you on, Representative Jackson? And what planet is Newsroom Africa on? Misleading people. This is a targeted list if it ever occurs. And the relationship is broken by the South Africans, not by the United States House of Representatives. See, this is the problem with putting people in Congress because daddy was in Congress or daddy was famous, or making them president because daddy was famous. They should stand on their own merit. And clearly Representative Jackson has no idea what's going on in South Africa. The South Africans have broken this relationship, and the ANC are the ones responsible for that broken relationship. You know where they were? In the dwindling days when trade negotiations could have been effected to get a bilateral agreement to reduce or eliminate the tariffs against South African goods and services coming into America? They were in China. And not just one person, 6 ministers and the deputy president, plus a deputy minister. 6 ministers. The minister who should have been here, the Minister of Trade and Industry, should have been negotiating with the U.S. He was there in China, supplicating himself before the Chinese communists. A country that already imposes 30 and 40% tariffs on their agricultural exports. But the Minister of Agriculture was there. What was he achieving? Wow. This relationship is broken because of the ANC and its behavior, not because of this proposed bill. And this cognitive dissonance or outright propaganda or simply peddling lies by Representative Jonathan Jackson doesn't help the situation. And that's the bottom line here, folks. What say you, South Africa, Zanzi, U.S.? What do you have to say? Our members of House of Representatives are involved in this now. The debate goes on. Oh, one final note there, Representative Jackson. This bill, while it wasn't co-sponsored by Democrats and Republicans, was voted on in committee by Democrats and Republicans, and by a vote of 34-16, including 7 members of your own party in an almost unprecedented bilateral vote. 7 Democrats sided with this bill going to the floor.